Howdy, and welcome to the channel. And today we're going to be installing these Weston HDX Nerf bars, or running boards, depending on what you want to call them, on this 2012 Chevy Silverado 2500HD crew cab long bed. And this is the wheel-to-wheel model. So these things are very, very long. So a little preface on this. Whenever you set this up, I would actually advise that you set everything up for this project out on a table. I don't always feel that way, but we put a lot of time and effort into laying out all of this stuff because the instructions, unfortunately, are pretty lackluster. They have you start at the rear and then go to the front and then you go to the bed, and it's really odd. They don't even really cover the center at all in the instructions. So I would lay everything out. I would test fit everything just by holding it up to make sure that you have the correct part in the correct location. Now, fortunately, most of this stuff is actually labeled D for driver and P for passenger, but then you have some that aren't labeled anything at all. So it is a little confusing whenever you first start working on it. Now, with this particular truck, down on the rocker panel, we actually have some nuts that are already formed within the body itself. And they do that because they're expecting you to put on a GM model Nerf bar onto this, or running board. So I would highly recommend, if you're like us, that you grab an M8 by 1.25 tap and you chase the threads of those bolts. Ours were very dirty on the inside with road grime, dirt, and a little bit of rust that's in there. So you want to make sure that you chase those so that these bolts have a very easy time of going in and not stripping themselves, or worse yet, breaking. Now, on this particular model, the HDX goes up towards the front wheel. However, my understanding is it may vary from model to model. So even if you don't know which end is which, it's actually okay. Once you get the mounts in place, you can simply measure and see which bar fits better, or you can hold it up and see which component fits better on either side of your truck. So whenever you're getting ready to mount this stuff, I'm actually going to start from the front and I'm going to work my way to the back. I've got everything laid out, so it's very simple for anybody who's helping me to grab each section as I am going down. Whenever you're putting these brackets on the truck, do not tighten them down at first. You want everything nice and loose. So whenever you put your Nerf bar up there, you can easily align everything and get it where it needs to go. Then you'll be able to torque everything down to spec. And they're very specific with the different sizes of bolts as to what those torque specifications are. First, we have the M8s, which are between 15 and 18 foot-pounds. Then we have the M10s, which are 32 to 38 foot-pounds. And then finally, we have the M12s, the big ones, and those are 52 to 60 foot-pounds. Starting at the front of the truck, we have bracket A, and then we're going to have one of our nuts that clips on, and we're going to have 2 flat washers, 2 lock washers, and 2 of our M8 bolts. Then moving to the center, we're going to have C, and in this case it's labeled DC for driver center, and then we're going to have one of our nuts that we're going to put on, 2 flat washers, 2 lock washers, and 2 M8 bolts. Then at the rear of the cab, we're going to have part B, and that is going to need 2 of these nuts, 2 fender washers or flat washers, 2 lock washers, and 2 of our M8 bolts. Next, we're going to have 2 components, and these are going to be required for the front of the bed portion. And we're going to mount this up inside the bed. And for that, we're going to need one of the special bolts. We're going to need a flat washer, lock washer, and nut. Then we're going to need our rubber isolator, and these actually pull apart. And the portion with the metal is going to go in the top like that. And then you're going to have a big flat washer, and then a lock washer, and then your bolts. And that is all going to go right up through here, which in turn is going to go up into this nut here. And that's your suspension for the front of the bed. And then we move to the rear of the bed, which is actually just in front of the rear tire. And for that, we're going to have yet another one that is going to be mounted up inside the bed, and yet another one of those fancy bolts. And then we're going to have a flat washer, a lock washer, and our nut. And then we're going to have 2 of the rubber isolators that are going to go right in here. And then we have a big flat washer for both of them, 2 lock washers, and 2 big bolts. Let's go ahead and get started on the installation. All right, so we're ready to install our front bracket, and you'll see we've got the front tire back over here, and then we're going to come up to our very first nut that is formed into our rocker panel. This has already been chased, and with our front one, it's going to go over the top. So that means that our little nut needs to go on with a nut facing down. And then with this, we're going to use our M8 bolt, and you'll see that we already have our lock washer and our flat washer on here. Start threading it into our nut there. Now again, we want to have these loose right now. Now on our center one, you'll see that we have a gap here, and so it's going to come up from underneath and go on. So that means that our nut that goes on here needs to be flipped the other way. Again, everything is loose. All right, on the rear, we're going to come back from our center one, which is right up here, and we're going to come back to the rearmost hole that's on the bottom of the rocker panel. And you'll see that right above here, we have this plastic rubbery kind of plug. We're gonna want to pop that out. And then as we put our rear bracket up, you can see that once again, it's going to be like the center. So we're going to have to put our nut up like that. And we push it in place. And then on the upper one, you can see that we are going to be lining up with this hole here. But what Chevy has done is they've given you a place right here to actually slide one of these funky little nuts on. So again, your nut should be on the inside. And you're gonna take it and slide it on. And this is the one that you may end up having to grab a pair of pliers if you need to. Now we move to the front of the bed. So on our bed, we have the squared off frame rail. We do not roll up the side, so we don't have to drill anything and we don't have to use the funky little extra rod that comes with it. However, we do have to remove this 18mm headed bolt that goes up, and that actually holds the bed. So we need to go ahead and pull this out so we can get our next bracket in. We're going to take our isolator and we're going to put it into this portion that is down, and then we're going to take the bottom of the isolator and put it here on the bottom. And then we use our big flat washer. Then we're going to take our bolt with a lock washer, slide it up and through, and it threads into here. And then it rotates out. Again, we're leaving everything loose so that we can do final adjustments, and then we will tighten everything up. This is our front bed rail, and then we pass by our fill, and then we come back to the second bed rail. That is where we're going to take another 18 mil and we're going to remove it, and this is what holds the bed down to the chassis. So we have our rear bracket, and again we're going to be putting our isolators in from the top, and then on the bottom we complete the isolator, and then we're going to use a long bolt with a big flat washer and a lock washer. So we now have all the brackets in place and we're ready to pick it up and put it on the mounts. Whenever you do this, you're definitely going to want to have somebody here or use a jack or something like that to bring it up to level. For this, we're going to be using the M8 bolts again, and it is 2 per section. However, any ones that are recessed further in, you need to use the shorter M8 bolts for those. Otherwise, you're going to dimple your brand new running board, and we don't want to do that. So that completes the driver's side. We now need to do the work on the passenger side. Now, one of the reasons that we picked this specific model is because I also have a 2012 long bed crew cab Silverado, and whenever you are trying to get into the rear, into the bed, it's actually challenging at times. So especially if you're trying to reach stuff that's further into the bed area. Having this step on the rear really makes it nice to where you can get up in there and actually get to the items that are in your bed. But let's go ahead and have my son try it out.
Yes, that's really nice.
A lot better?
Yeah. It is a bit tight here. You have to be a bit careful of that.
That's nice. They look real nice with it too.
I agree.
They blend real good with the truck. Look at how it blends with it. It actually does a very good job of hiding the frame rail. And if you look underneath, it does not stick further down than the frame rail. Also goes really good with your wheels. That is so nice.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Much better than my Nerf bars that I have. So it's another day for us, and we're ready to install the passenger side as well. Once again, we've laid everything out to make this extremely easy. So one thing to note on this, there is a difference if you have the gasoline versus the diesel truck. With the diesel truck, you're gonna have the DEF tank that is on the passenger side. That means you need to use a different style mount. In this case, the one with the diesel or the DEF is going to have this more girthy piece. And you'll see that it actually has a very pronounced cutout that is here. Now, if we compare that to the gasoline version, you will see that we have a much thicker plate, but we do not have that same girth that we have on the diesel one. So that is the difference. This is going to be the gasoline, this is going to be the diesel. So starting in the front, we have the front plate. We have all the connectors needed to attach this and the running board itself. Then we have the diesel, and you can see just how much more girthy this is than the gasoline version. Then we have the hardware laid out for it. Next is going to be towards the rear of the cab. We have all the hardware laid out for it. And then we have, very similar to the driver's side, we have the same upper that goes up by the bed rail. Then we have the portion that drops. We have all the hardware laid out for it. So all that's going to be for the front of the bed. And then at the rear of the bed, we have the larger with the 2 isolators that is on the rear. So that gets you covered with all of the items that you're going to need to install. So that's our installation process on this 2012 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD. Overall, it was actually pretty simple. The only difficult part was to lay everything out ahead of time to make sure that you had all of those parts in order. Again, the instructions are pretty unclear on certain parts of it, so it's a lot easier if you lay all of those parts out and get them in line, and then it'll start making sense as you're doing it. The other thing I would recommend is that you take that tap and you tap those holes for the actual running board itself. Not only are you going to want to do it on the truck, but you're going to want to do it on the Nerf bar. So look at those holes in the Nerf bar, see if they have any slag in them, any extra paint in them, and clean those out before you put it up on the truck. You'll save yourself a lot of hassle. We did have one that had a little slag ball in it, and we couldn't get the bolt to go in at all, so we had to remove the entire bracket assembly in order to get that going. Other than that, pretty simple kit to install overall. Definitely something you could do on a weekend. We could have actually done it in one day, but we started pretty late in the day. So if you're doing that, do it in the evenings, and it's going to be a 2-day project. One day for one side, one day for the other. If you have any questions about the installation or about this particular product, please leave it in the comments below. We love talking with everybody out there from all around the world. It's amazing how we have all of this reach through this medium. Thank you very much for watching.